Hi. Your friendly neighborhood Zen here. Welcome to CTF Holocron. A Holocron is a storage of knowledge, and this is a Holocron about Capture the Flag. This is going to be a series of videos. Basically, I want to write down all the thoughts and knowledge I have about playing JACTF. Sort of if I was able to go back to myself when I first started pugging, what would I want to teach that young, skillless Zen? I want to cover topics like config, aim, improving, tactics, maps, and whatever else seems to fit. If you are coming here to see the ultimate guide on all things CTF, I'm going to let you down. However, if you want to see one random guy's perspective on this game, then you've come to the right place. I hope to deliver 80% quality information, maybe start some conversation around these topics. And I hope some of you find this useful in your own journey. With that out of the way, let's start to lay the groundwork. To start, I'm assuming you've already done the bare-bone basics. That is, you are playing on new mod, you have read and understand the jactf.com pages and are hopefully on the jactf Discord, and have played at least a few pugs. Now to get to the meat. Config, your settings, CFG, whatever you want to call it, is an important piece to the game. To be clear, none of these settings are going to make you into a god. There isn't some magical command that is going to solve all your problems, sorry. But there are things you can do to make things easier, or better, or just more consistent. In addition, there are a lot of settings that are there to fit to your liking. I'll try to provide what I use and why, and will trust you to find what works best for you. So in order to try to capture the settings that are important, I reset my config to default.
So here, we are in default config glory. The first thing I had to do was turn off the in-game music. Next I go third person and turn off radar. Now if you find value from the radar, go ahead and keep it, but for me I rather have the screen space. I change CG HUD files from the default to 1. This gives a text version of the HUD that takes up less space. Next I turn on CG Draw FPS 1. Cause I like to see my frame rate. Next is CG Draw Team Overlay. When you put in the CMD, you can see the helpful description for each of the values. I'm a fan of classic and don't need to see myself up there, so I tend to use 4. For the purposes of this video, I left it at 3 so you can actually see it, since I am alone and depressed in this video. Next I change my sensitivity, just to make it more comfortable to run around. I don't have any guidance for you right now on your sensitivity, it will be covered in a later video regarding aim. CG FOV, so this one is a big one. Default is 80, base locks you to 97 max, and mods allow you to go higher. I think 120 is a popular value, I personally use 110 with CG widescreen 1. The widescreen CMD is important since it does move the camera a fair bit, so just to make sure we are speaking about apples to apples, it makes sense to discuss FOV and CG widescreen together. Next is good old COM max FPS. Now this command used to be so much more important, as the game had FPS dependent physics, but now that the physics are independent you can kinda just max this out. I use 250 personally. If you want to go beyond 250, could try 333 or even 500. If you can't get stable, 250, 125 is next best. R, gamma. Basically brightness. If you can't see, increase it. While a lot of CMDs I know from the console there are a good amount that you can do straight from the menu. For scope, I like to use the crosshair scope, where there is nothing extra, just your crosshair shown. For me, this is the best as it gives the most consistency with normal aiming and doesn't have anything blocking my vision. For my crosshair, there were a few settings that I wanted exact which were easiest done through the console. I like a yellow dot of a small size. As you can see, there are many options you can use to customize your crosshair. This next one is a little more exotic. It controls how long the enemy name is on the screen after you hover over them. For me, I like it to flicker on and off as I have my crosshair on them as such. Here is the default behavior. I'm not a fan of saber trail, which is the swishy trail that a saber makes when you slash. I turn it off. Speed trail defaults to 0, though it is on in base. I greatly prefer it off in order to clearly see enemies, though I have also played with it on for many years. So use what you want. CG simple items. This one is important. As the description says, it gives you icons instead of 3D models for pickups. The key thing is that these icons are flat 2D images that are very visible from afar. As an example, from this position we have line of sight toward the 2 sniper ammo, the 2 rocket ammo, and the 2 repeater ammo. However, they are far and small and hard to see. With simple items, it's much easier to see if they are there. With weapons, it isn't as important since you will already know where all the weapons are in a map. For me, to get rid of the bobbing and rotating and being able to see them from far away is a benefit. So with simple items off, you can just barely see the dropped sniper next to the sniper spawn. Now there is another CMD if you want to change the style of dropped weapon specifically, which is seen here. You can make the dropped weapon be a simple item or 3D. The same applies to dropped flags. 3D dropped flag model can get partially stuck in a wall so it's hard to see. For me, I like everything as a simple items and nothing as 3D. If you love the 3D models, I would suggest considering using the available options with CG simple items to change things like ammo/health. And then use dropped weapons/flags to change them to be either the more visible 3D option or make them simple style. CG lag-o-meter will give you a meter showing your ping. You can Google this command if you want information on what the lines mean. In the controls menu, under other, I adjust auto weapon switch to be off. There is a CG CMD for this too. In the new mod settings, carrier display is important. It's on by default, but if somehow you have it off, it's good to turn on. Gives you the FC health/force/armor/location at the bottom of your screen. This ammo view thing is nice. There are a lot of really nice shader/color settings here so that you can change the visual style of these effects and their color. I haven't put a ton of thought into the settings I use for these. Basically I use a different color for allied and enemy absorb. Here you can see the dark blue change to the bisque color. For protect, I just use default. So feel free to experiment and use what works best for you. Jump sounds are basically audio wall hacks. Your own jump sounds are not needed, so can use to exclude yourself and save your ears a bit. CG smooth movement. I assume it does what it says, and I turn it on. CG force model. So there are a lot of options you have here in new mod. Personally, I force allies to be reborn and enemy to be cultist. The idea behind this was to differentiate allies and enemies, but make enemies common for purposes of consistency. No model differences means less visual variation, which in turn means more consistency. Consistency builds up trained aiming knowledge and therefore Zen airs you easier. However, I am not sold this is the only one and wholly true way. In fact, this is probably not the best option. A potentially better option is set specific models for allies and enemies. This way, you'll avoid having any weird models, have a consistent set of models, but also be able to differentiate on visual alone. Each match, you will build the relation of that model equals this player equals this POS, and then you can probably execute faster to weird situations like the enemy base grabbing the flag in your base or whatever. I've trained myself to hover crosshair over bad guys so I see their names and I know who they are. Also situations are fairly standard to predict who you are engaging against, and strafe style plus saber type are sometimes enough to tell who is who, but if you want an easier time then pool is probably your best bet. I really can't argue for my approach of forcing all the enemy models to be the same. So if you are going the multiple models route, I would try to pick models that best animate / are visually visible / fit the hitbox best. So like skirt, models like Mon Mothma / Jawa are probably bad choices. Relo shouldn't fit the hitbox, but I haven't seen any data on that stuff. Something else to consider, I guess, is their jump sounds and pain sounds. A loud jump sound, like Tuscan, might be clearly heard but would drive me to insanity. Clear low health pain sounds could also be a criteria, but I'm not sure any model really stands out. That might be more about being used to it. CG third person alpha allows you to make your model see through. Since we play in third person, there are instances where a player model can block our view, so I find it useful to make the model barely visible. I've walked this value down over time, it might take some adjusting to. I currently use 0.05. A similar command is CG third person flag alpha, does the same stuff just for flag. Same reasoning to use it, to improve visibility. I currently have it set to 0.03. This might be too low as sometimes I can't tell if I grab the flag and end up looking to see if I'm glowing, so tweak to whatever works best for you. CG ambient sound 0 allows you to disable some weird map sounds as shown here. Here you can hear a dull hum in the background. Turning it off, you can hear the utter silence of our collective despair. CG disruptor allows you to customize the size and duration sniper shot. Extending the time can make it easier to trace a shot back to where it came, or if you want a lasting visual of where you last aimed. Customize to your preference. I currently use mainTime equals 500 altTime equals 1000. Experimenting if having a longer altTime helps with finding guys sniping me. I don't really have an issue locating, especially after being hit, but maybe this helps, so I'm trying it out. CG weather 0 allows you to turn off fog and other weather effects. Our fast sky is a setting originally for performance, but I use it to have a consistent sky. CG match start spam is what it sounds like. Setting to 0 will disable all the noisy spawns at the start of a match. CG render to texture FX is also originally a performance option, but I use for easier visibility. By default it makes this distortion effect, turning it off will remove this and you just get a simple effect. CG, unlagged. Turn this on. If you use time nudge, then choose the option that works best for you. Regarding time nudge, I wouldn't use it until you are at 60 ping or so, and then I would use auto equals 33 or 40 or something of the sort. Time nudge is a whole subject of its own related to ping, so I'm not going to get into it now. Last one I want to cover is related to pistol charge sounds. With default behavior, the sound effect implies that charging takes a few seconds to max out. By using the one setting, we can get a sound that matches the real charge time. Here again is the far too slow default behavior. As you can see, there are multiple options here. You can have a beep sound when fully charged, or have both. With the correct length, you get a much faster charging sound that matches the reality of the charge. So those are the ones I wanted to cover. See the description for a list. If you have questions, then there are nice people in the Discord that can help you out.
See ya.
Of the CAD crew.